Today we have a story about a special ops team commander who's leading a reconnaissance team in Alaska, and there they find some tracks and they follow them, and what they find is very frightening. That's next.
So I recently found Babbel, and Babbel is a language learning software. We could have really used this on a recent trip to Mazatlan, Mexico. It would have made our trip smoother and more enjoyable had we known some basic Spanish. Babbel is one of the top language learning apps in the world. For just 5 or 10 minutes a day, you can learn another language. I've been learning some Spanish, and it's been a lot of fun.
Usted es el señor Campos.
Usted es el señor Campos.
Usted es la señora García.
Usted es la señora Garcia. Babbel is like having your own language coach. It really helps in everyday conversations. Me trae la cuenta. La comida era delicioso. Gracias. Get 60% off your subscription in the link below, and in the comments, let me know what language you'd like to learn with Babbel.
Okay, so this morning I am at Washoe Lake State Park, and this is a wildlife rich area. It's pretty cool with the wetlands and marshlands around here, and I'm having my Hollister espresso this morning. I don't have cream or sugar, it's just black, so it's gonna give me quite a jolt this morning. Oh, that is good. Nice and warm. A little coolish this morning. All right, cheers. So in February of 1994, Miles was a team commander of a special operations force, and they were doing strategic reconnaissance training in Alaska in the middle of winter. And the definition of reconnaissance is military observation of a region to locate an enemy or ascertain strategic features. Essentially, a small group goes in, is undetectable as possible, gathers as much information about what the enemy is doing, and then gets out of the area and reports back to command. And does that with his evasive techniques and strategies. That's what they were doing. And they were doing winter training on cross-country skis. They had backpacks, tents, MREs, and all the gear to stay warm, and there was a team of 11 of them. They were outside of Fairbanks, Alaska, east of the Eielson Air Force Base, in very thick forest. Cross-country skis, they got dropped off, they had a 3-day trip, and they're going in, single file, 11 of them, going up ridges, down the other side, through lowlands, through marshy areas, and doing their training. They get to a point where they come to this forest, it's very thick, and the team commander Miles says, you know, I think we need to go in and kind of see if we can get through here or go around. So he and 2 other soldiers put their snowshoes on and worked their way in through this dense forest to see if there was a route through there. While in this forest, they found some footprints, some very large footprints, about 18, 19 inches long in the snow with a really wide stride to them. One of the soldiers got off his snowshoes. Instantly he went up over his knees, about a foot over his knees, in the snow, and he tried to walk in the snow the best he could to see what kind of stride that they would have, and he could barely get about 1.5 feet of a stride. There's 5 feet between these footprints. 5 feet is this wide. I measured it with a tape measure. They also noticed on these footprints that they were very clean. Whatever made them could lift its leg up very high, make the hole, and then make the next footprint. When this soldier would make tracks, he would leave drag marks between the footprints, broken snow around it, just really messy. These tracks were extremely clean and really wide stride. They got the team sergeant over to look at them. He was an expert in tracking. All of them knew tracking really well, but he was the expert. Whatever this was just defied belief what they were really looking at. 18-inch prints. They could see the toes down at the bottom of this deep hole where the footprint was. Footprints. They discussed it, they talked about it, and this team sergeant estimated, based on the stride and how deep it was and how big it was, that this thing was towering at 9 feet, weighing between 500 and 700 pounds. This is an estimate. Didn't really know. They thought, this is really interesting. Let's follow these tracks. Let's see what we can find. Let's see what this thing is doing, where it's going. They followed these tracks for several hours, and they learned that this thing, these tracks, would go across the tops of ridge lines at the very top, but stay like in the trees, and then it would be in lowlands, so very high, very low. And if it crossed a ridge, going up and over, it would find the lowest point and go right up to the like a saddle and come down the other side. But it knew like where the saddle was. It wouldn't like go along the ridge and look for it. It would just go and go right to the slow point and come down the other side. It was like it knew the forest. There would be a clearing or an opening in the forest, and it would turn well before the opening in the forest and come around. It didn't come up to the clearing, see it, and then go around. It would well before this clearing. So it was knew the forest. They said it had evasive techniques very similar to their techniques in how it traveled through the forest. It did whatever it could to remain undetected. Really interesting. It really captivated their attention by whatever this thing was and how it was traveling through the forest. The snow was very deep, made travel really slow. They're on cross-country skis. Could use the snowshoes if they got in thick areas. But after several hours of this, the sun was starting to go down. They thought, let's set up camp and let's hunker down for the night. They got MREs, get the water boiling, have some meals, get in their sleeping bags, do a little reading, relaxing, and just trying to stay warm and get some rest. They got a big day the next day. Right around 9, 10 o'clock, they're pretty much all of them are sound asleep. Slight breeze picks up. It's not a storm coming in, but there's just a slight breeze. And about 4 a.m., Miles wakes up to the sound of what he thinks is a wolf howling. There's wolves in Alaska. And it's very faint, it's off in the distance. And he's listening to this, and it's just kind of this howl, but then it has like a roar to it almost. And it kind of is this funny echo off the hills. And he's listening to this, and like, okay, some wild animal out there, sounds like possibly a wolf. Then it's quiet. About 15 minutes after that, he hears something coming through the forest. It's getting louder. Very faint at first, and it just gets a little bit louder, and he's thinking, is that a moose? It's not a bear. Bears are hibernating this time of year. But whatever it is, it's making some noise. Now it sounds like it's coming towards their camp. Then it stops, and he's guessing it's maybe 100 feet away. It's quiet again. The wind stops. It's just dead quiet. It's middle of winter. There's no frogs. There's nothing. It's the middle of winter. It's dead silent. And he's listening intently because whatever this thing was, it didn't retreat and it stopped advancing towards them. He's thinking, it's whatever this is, it's got to be there. Just standing there or something. Then he hears it southeast of them start moving, like movement. It wasn't coming towards them. It wasn't going away. It was almost like it was walking back and forth in the brush. It was breaking branches and making a lot of noise. The other people started unzipping their tent and they're like, hey, are you hearing this? And Miles unzips his tent. He's listening. He's nodding his head. And he's like, yeah, I'm hearing this. Then this went on for 3, 4, almost 5 minutes. This just back and forth in the forest. Deep snow. Then it stops. It's dead quiet again. And they hear, after about 1 minute, this loud howl, roar, almost a scream. Just bone-chilling, spine-tingling. The hair in their back of their neck went up. That's what Miles said. Very frightening. Just whatever this was right there in this loud scream. It sounded similar to what he heard earlier, but now this time it was more clear and right there. And you could hear it echoing right off the hills. And this went on for 8-10 seconds. And then again, it's quiet. Now they got the flashlights. They're shining them around, looking in the forest. They don't see anything. They don't hear anything. And they're on a training mission, so they had no ammo for their weapons. They were on a reconnaissance training, and there was no engagement with another team or anything where they needed ammo. And they were like feeling like we could be outmatched here. Whatever this is out there, we feel outmatched, and this is going bad really quickly. Miles is hearing the conversations, and they're talking. They're having the discussions about this, and Miles said, well, I think at this point we're no longer going to pursue these tracks. When the sun comes up, we'll pack up and get out of here. Right then, they heard in the forest this tree, and they heard this tree. It sounded like it was being pushed, and they could see the tops of the trees movement. There was movement on the tops of the trees. And then they hear this loud cracking sound, and then this tree comes crashing down. But they were like, okay, that's it, we're done. This is insane. There's something out there. It's not a moose, it's not a grizzly bear. And so they talked about it, and they said, let's get out of here, first light. So they started to pack up some of their gear. This is like 4-ish in the morning. They had about 4 hours to wait. The sun at that time of year in Alaska comes up about 8:30, 8:45 in mid-February. Before they left, Miles and one of the soldiers went into the forest and looked around, and they found more of these large footprints, and they found an area that was very packed down, like this creature had been going back and forth in the forest, just like they heard. And they also found the broken off tree. It was about 12 inches around, dead pine tree, pretty clean break on it. It wasn't a broken down pine tree. It was pretty clean break on it. Maybe 35 feet tall. And then they had a discussion, and they came to pretty much a unanimous agreement that when they get back, when they return, they were not going to discuss this with anybody. They were not going to talk about it, period. And in fact, Miles, the team commander, said, you know, at this point, I don't want to ever hear about this again. What just happened here from yesterday until now. So they finished out their training mission, did 2 more nights, came back. Again, they didn't talk about it. They knew they were not supposed to talk about it. They knew it would make their life easier, simpler to not bring it up back at command. Now, really interesting, I talked to one of our viewers. His name is Anthony. We've been talking about his story. We talked to him a while ago. He is from northeastern Washington, lives up there, and up in northeast Washington they have a survival school called the Fairchild Air Force Survival School. And they take teams of people and go out into the wilderness and train them in similar types of techniques as these guys were doing. And they would government issue a map, a topographical map for them, put in their packs to bring with them. Printed on the map was the state of Washington and the area that they were in. Very detailed topographical map. On the back side of this map, and he sent me pictures of this, and I found pictures on the internet as well. Really interesting. Big map folds out. On the back side, there's tips on using compasses, wilderness travel techniques, staying hydrated, different things on different tips on the map. Also, there was a section called Dangerous Animals. And they would list these dangerous animals and show a little illustration of each animal for identification. They had moose, bear, mountain lion, bobcat, badger, some other animals. In amongst this list was Sasquatch, with an illustration of a Sasquatch. Below it, in parentheses, it said Bigfoot. This was issued by the government to these people in this survival training school in Washington. Really interesting. I just thought I would mention that in context to not talking about this type of event for people that are in training. really pretty wild. So, but Miles said that he always wondered what they would have actually saw had they continued to follow these tracks and what they really would have seen. And he knows pretty much deep down it had to be a Sasquatch. And so that is our story for today. I got a beautiful day ahead of me here. It's kind of fun getting out early in the morning. Beautiful park here, this state park in Nevada. All right, you guys, thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one. As always, keep hiking.